As is our way, we have the great privilege of having Uncle Chika here to welcome us to country. Please join me in welcoming Uncle Chika.
Good morning, folks. My name is Charles Madden, but known around the inner city of Sydney as Chika. Now, that's a nickname that I got many, many years ago going to Redfern Public School, which is now NCIE, the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence. Folks, I'm from Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. That's the land we're on at the moment. For many, many years, I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I've been involved with quite a few Aboriginal organisations over the years. I've been a director with the Aboriginal Medical Service at Redfern for over 40 years. Also a director with the Redfern Aboriginal Housing Company, Aboriginal Hostels Australia, and the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. Got to mention it, folks. Also a life member of the Redfern All Blacks Rugby League Football Club. Thank you. Folks, for many, many years I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I'd like to take this opportunity this morning to extend a warm and sincere welcome to all of my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters. If we have any brothers and sisters here from the Torres Strait or further afar across the seas, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. The Gadigal clan is one of 29 that makes up the Eora Nation. The Eora Nation is bordered by 3 distinctive landmarks. We have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Peen to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Those 3 rivers form the boundaries of the Eora Nation. Folks, if you've travelled across this great city of ours today, the state or this great country, or from afar, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. Enjoy your stay. Have a safe and trouble-free trip home. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Enjoy the day, folks. Thank you. Yep.
You always know you're going to have a good meeting when Uncle Chika comes and gives us his absolutely beautiful opening to these proceedings. I'd also like to lend my voice to those to recognise this beautiful country that we have the privilege and joy of meeting on today. It always has been Aboriginal land, will always be Aboriginal land. Land will never forget us. Country always informs us of what we do if we choose to listen. So I'm grateful that Uncle has reminded us of where we are. So we have a small video to play you. And while we're rolling that small video, I'll just give you a tiny bit of context of it. It's a video that was created in honour of this, the 5th year of the Winch lecture. The Winch lecture, as you know, has come from a beautiful gift by Ron Winch, who is sitting here today with his wonderful partner, Elizabeth, in memory of his parents. And it's enabled us to do some work here that offers lectures to people on the story of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across a multitude of different parts of how it is we see country, how we rejoice country, how we learn from country, and how country teaches us to belong. So when we're ready, we will roll it. It is my honour to welcome you to the 2024 Arthur and Hilda Winch Annual Lecture in Pre-Colonial Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Culture. This year's event is particularly significant as it marks the final lecture in this remarkable series, which has played a crucial role in sharing and celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges and cultures. Established in 2020, the Arthur and Hilda Winch Lecture Series has been made possible through the generous support of Ron Winch and the Winch family. Over the past years, we've delved into diverse topics, sometimes under challenging conditions. For example, During the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bruce Pascoe was our inaugural speaker. He gave us insights into the ingenuity of Indigenous farming and land management. In 2021, we were honoured to hear from Robert Cooley of the Gamay Rangers and Dennis Rose of the Guditjamara Traditional Owners Aboriginal Corporation to speak on Indigenous knowledges of waterways.
Would walk up to the headlands and go groper fishing. So this is a very important spot, and we still use this spot today.
As appropriate to such a significant topic, our distinguished speakers spoke to the differences and similarities of saltwater and freshwater. We learnt a lot.
Spent time observing, understanding, protecting, looking after and respecting country, particularly the water.
In 2022, we were joined by Associate Professor of Cultural Astronomy, Dwayne Hamachuk, who has worked for many, many years with Torres Strait Islander elders and cultural knowledge holders to teach us more about the depths of astronomical knowledge held and practiced in the very north.
Uncle David Bozen is a Mualgal man from the village of Kuban in the Western Torres Strait. And what he explained to me is that what you want to do is look and see where the sun sets on the western horizon relative to an archipelago of islands in the distance.
The 2023 lecture brought together a number of speakers to explore the different facets of pre-colonial trade in the top end. This lecture was marked by contributions from Dr. Amy Mossig-Way, Distinguished Professor Paul S.C. Takol, Professor Lynette Russell, Professor Darryl Wesley, and Associate Professor Sally K. May.
We also know that far from the generally accepted notion of an isolated shoreline, the North was actually teeming with watercraft and crew engaged in trade for hundreds of years before European settlements in the region.
Each revealed some of the extraordinary and amazing details of trade networks that are very much a part of thriving communities in Australia's north. Fire has been long understood as an evocative and powerful element of transformation. Every culture has its stories about the responsibilities and dangers that come from the ability to make, sustain and control fire. For some, fire is sacred in nature, with the capacity to alter the environment and change the state of things. It's increasingly a subject of conversation here and abroad. Fire is a part of the very fabric of this continent, and its uses and importance cannot be overstated. Today, we have the opportunity to learn more about fire, its history, and how powerfully entwined it is with country and the first peoples of these lands. For tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have used fire as a tool to shape the land, promote biodiversity, manage resources, and maintain cultural practices. This ancient wisdom has been passed down through generations, emphasising fire is not just a physical element, but it's a powerful spiritual and cultural force integral to the health and well-being of country. This year, we'll be learning something of fire. We are privileged to hear from Victor Steffensen as our keynote speaker. Victor is a filmmaker, a musician, and a consultant whose life work has centred on reviving traditional burning practices and reapplying cultural knowledge in modern Australia. His lecture will focus on pre-colonial fire management, a topic of immense importance as we continue the significant work of caring for country. The Arthur and Hilda Winch lecture series exemplifies the profound impact that donor-funded initiatives can have within academic institutions. These foster an environment where diverse cultural knowledge can be shared and celebrated. Through the generosity of Ron Winch and the Winch family, this lecture series has illuminated powerful aspects of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledges and culture, from land management to the skies, from the waters to us all. This all offers us invaluable insights that enrich the understanding of all who choose to engage with it. These events are not only crucial for preserving and honouring Indigenous knowledges, but they're also important for promoting a more inclusive and informed society. By sharing this knowledge, public institutions like the University of Sydney play a pivotal role in bridging cultural divides, of fostering respect and ensuring that the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are recognised and integrated into the broader educational and social contexts, basically benefiting everybody in the process.
The way in which we depict our past. Australia was never isolated. It was never a sad, lonely place where nobody visited. We know that people visited, and the Macassans are merely one of many people who visited us for many, many hundreds of years.
Although this is the final event in the Arthur and Hilda Winch lecture series, the knowledge shared over the last 5 years will remain available for future generations. All of these lectures have been recorded and will be preserved and serve as a vital resource for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as well as for our staff and students here at the university. It's a privilege to hold and share this knowledge, ensuring that it continues to inform and inspire. We very much look forward to welcoming you today to what promises to be a powerful and thought-provoking lecture of this series. Thank you. We know that there are fires burning today. And one of the things about fire is that they can go on for a very, very long time. And I'm sure it comes as no surprise to our wonderful speaker today, but will be a surprise to some of us, that the longest burning fire on earth is on the lands of the Wonnarua people in New South Wales here. This is an underground fire of Mount Wingan. It's a result of a natural coal seam smoulder that's been burning for at least 6,000 years. To put that into context, that predates the Great Pyramid of Giza. That's a very, very long time. And yes, of course, it's considered sacred. We've got a quote here from the Woronora National Aboriginal Corporation from 2014, and they state that a Woronora story explains that the Gomeroi tribe from over the Liverpool Range sent a raiding party south to steal Woronora women for wives. Warned by the Wiradjuri people, the Woronora warriors prepared for the attack. After the battle, all the warriors, except one, returned home. The warrior's beloved sat at the edge of the cliff, awaiting for his return. When he failed to do so, she asked the sky god Biami to kill her because she didn't want to live without him. Taking pity on her, he turned her to stone. As she was transformed, she cried tears of fire, setting Burning Mountain alight. Fire is a part of this continent and a significant part of our relationship to country. But the beginning of colonisation led to changes, as we know, in how we care for country. This has had dangerous consequences when it comes to fire. As Dr. Jim Cohen noted in 1993, and I quote, "While Aboriginal people used fire as a tool for increasing the productivity of their environment, Europeans saw fire as a threat," end quote. The lower intensity burning practiced before colonisation was disrupted, leading to a dramatic increase in leaf litter and all the rest of it that has given us the enhanced fire state we know today. When fires are especially devastating, they're given names. Can you remember the Black Summer fires of 2019-2020, immediately preceding COVID? How about Black Saturday in Victoria in 2009, or Ash Wednesday for those of us who are alive in 1983? And there are many other named fires of such magnitude throughout the more recent history of this land. To give something a name is to try to come to grips with it, to try and acknowledge the power that it has and open the path to commemoration. The effects of fire when it happens at scale and across so much of the planet touches upon everything from biodiversity, agricultural capacity, of course, also to human health. Some of the immediate consequences on our health come from particulate matter produced by fires. The smoke contains a variety of toxic and carcinogenic compounds. These effects reduce immune system function and lead to inflammation of the skin, the airways, the cardiovascular system, the gastrointestinal system, and the central nervous system. Severe fires also pose troubling risks during pregnancy, and those risks, of course, extend naturally to the fetus. A healthy respect for fire and its capacity to influence human health is essential when we consider our part as caretakers of this place to become good ancestors for those generations who come after us. In contrast to the challenges posed by fires that burn without restraint, fire in moderation enables us to harness its transformative power. When we talk about the warmth of good company, the metaphor underpinned by the centrality of fire and cooking, of the food that brings us together. And I ask you, who doesn't love a good barbecue? The use of fire for warmth, protection, coming together, for cooking, it's all a part of our enduring and shared culture, no matter where on earth we come from. The record for the use of fire across the continent continues to be an area of interest. Recent work examining the Girraween Lagoon in the Northern Territory has established the pattern of regular, low-intensity fires that goes back more than 11,000 years. The use of fire by the peoples of the East Coast was observed as recently as Cook on multiple occasions during the Endeavour voyage in 1770. Despite noting the fires over the course of several days as they travelled the coastline, they failed to recognise the use of fire as a tool of communication amongst the different groups along that coastline. Closer to home, as Uncle has shared with us, we're on Gaddi land, and that local plant, the Gaddi, is adapted to fire. Yes, the lands we're on today share a long-standing relationship with fire. The genus Xanathea is unique to Australia, and the Gaddi is endemic here. It's very, very hardy throughout drought, and while the dry leaves and trunk may be burnt, these remarkable trees do come back after fire, often going into flower. The relationship with fire is no less important to Aboriginal people, with the capacity to alter the environment, change the state of things, and necessarily increasing the subject of conversation here and abroad. Today, I'm very, very delighted to offer you our wonderful final speaker in the Winch series lecture, Victor Steffensen. Please join me in welcoming him to the podium.
Good morning. Is it morning? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for the welcome and the welcome to the country and the introduction. And also thanks so much for everyone for turning up today to come to this talk. Also thanks to the Winch family as well for making this possible. And my name is Victor Steffensen. I'm Tagalog descent from my mother's side, from the Gulf country and far north Queensland. My father's side, got Scandinavian blood and all different bloodlines there, and proud of all of them. And living in far north Queensland, growing up there, it was like a mission for me to put back the pieces. And growing up as a child, because asking my mother and families about Indigenous knowledge, people didn't know much because of the stolen generation stuff, and everyone knows that story. But from there, as I learned and through my mentors, there's one thing that the old people always said was that if they don't listen to the old fellas, don't listen to the Indigenous knowledge of this landscape, they're going to have a lot of problems in the future. They used to tell me that back a long time ago, like in the late 80s and early 90s, when I was listening to them. So the alarm bells were always ringing long before, and even longer before then, when I heard it through my own ears from our elders. And that is pretty much very true when you're listening to people who come from the landscapes and understand landscapes so well and know that they're in land and see the changes in landscapes and what's happening within our country with our flora, our fauna, our entire landscape, our rivers. and more importantly, the big black plumes of smoke that we would see happening in the far distance from, the national parks and different agencies that were burning in those times. But if we go back and further back, fire for Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, not just in Australia, but also in other parts of the world, was a really important tool. Not just a tool, but also a spiritual connection, a natural element that was so important for so many reasons, as you know, with the cooking and so forth. But more importantly, fire was a part of creation, and fire is an element of life. And that is a very significant part of maintaining landscapes and looking after our country because of the evolution of our landscapes with fire. And that didn't happen on its own. The fire has evolved with people for thousands of years. So people have been a part of evolving our landscape and its diversity. And the fact when the first settlers came to Australia and they saw all the different ecosystems and all the different animals, what they were looking at was a landscape that was managed and taken care of. And that diversity would not exist the way it did without the support of maintaining that diversity and looking after it. Otherwise, if you didn't look after the land, what happens? What we see today. Things start to get out of control, lightning strikes, fire will take off, burn all the trees down, and have a significant loss of our natural resources, which was the economy of the Aboriginal people for thousands of years. So the economy was a healthy landscape. And that healthy landscape provided food, and it was all about food. Fire is food. It is the health of the landscape. It is looking after the country, but the main aim is to provide lots of resources, food, and make it rich. Just and that was the economy. Wasn't the money, as obviously as you know. It was the trade. It was holding ceremonies and feeding people that came for ceremonies. And it was always a proud moment for any elder that you go to any country, woman or man, that would say, "Oh, welcome to my country. Welcome to this place. This is my country that I look after, we're custodians of, and we have the barramundi. And for us, we have the black brim." And so someone would be happy to go to other places just to have that resource. And even with the Bunya Mountains, and the stories goes on with the Bunya Pines and how things were shared right across Australia in different places. So the resources were highly important, and that economy was that healthy landscape. So when the fire was lit, it was done with precision and expertise around the identity of landscapes, the identity of our ecosystems. And so each different ecosystem requires different soils, different soil types. It also has different vegetation types, and every system also has different grass types and types of grass. And over thousands of years of applying fire with that right timing within those different ecosystems and landscapes, it produced the right heats for the soils, and over and over again, generation after generation, that's part of the plants and animals evolved with fire. So as an outcome, when we look at the animals and the behavior of the animals with fire, the way they behave, the insects, when we light that fire, the fire goes really cool along the ground, very small, just cleaning up the rubbish, not affecting plants that belong there, but only affecting plants that don't belong there. And each specific ecosystem has a different DNA or a different way of reacting to different temperatures. And so as different soil types and different landscapes, what happens is that they cure at different times of year. And that curing stage doesn't just go all over the country, it happens in different places at different times. And being right on cue means being on country all the time. And so burning was something that was done constantly. It wasn't done something like, oh, we've got to burn to reduce all the fuel load and do a big area. It was a part of hunting, it was a part of gathering, it was a part of so many activities that you had so many different types of fires all the time going on. And all those different fires had different values, and all the different ecosystems provided different values as well, in the sense of where women might gather and dig for yam or do different things. And then other systems were used for hunting and burn the areas to bring back the grasses, to bring the kangaroo come back. So they would sneak up later and create hunting grounds with fire. And to flush animals out, there were so many different varieties of fire. And when we're looking at burning those systems, getting those right temperatures in the soils, then the animals, what they do, they climb. So the insects start climbing first. They smell the smoke and head up the trees. And they go to the canopies. And they know it's a safe place up there. Because for thousands of years, the law was never burn the canopy, never burn the trees. So the insects know it's a safe place. The other things is that the fire moves so slow and so cool that all the other animals are so easy to go underground and get under the logs and be safe. So when you lift those logs, they're full of insects and snakes and spiders and different things. And also in the barks of the trees, everything moves into the bark, goes underground. And also for things like kangaroos and other animals, bandicoot and so forth, they don't have far to go to hop into the next system. All of their reactions, including the birds that come along and feed off the grasshoppers, and all of the, where they come to the fire, is all part of them knowing the same knowledge that I'm talking about. So the animals know this knowledge. And sometimes when we will burn in a certain place, there'll be a no-fire country over there, which is a country that we don't burn. So we'll burn in a certain system, and then we would go over to the no-fire country, and we see the wallabies in there waiting patiently as the fire goes by, because they know the fire's not going to burn in there. So the animals know, and their instincts and why they react to fire, that's what lines up the right practice on how we apply fire to country and how we rebuild knowledge on country. And it's all part of understanding the landscape by reading country, reading the trees to be in the right place at the right time of the year, and understanding the animals and what we're burning for. And so over time of that continuous land management and continuous evolving landscapes, the grass cures and the animals do their breeding, and the different ecosystems won't burn at certain times. It all fit in with the breeding times of the animals. It all feed in with the cycle. Everything is connected into one thing. And so, for example, the bloodwood country, for example. When we go to the bloodwood country up our way, that country doesn't burn till July, late July, early August. Any time before then, it is too green to burn. It's impossible. It's too green when it's healthy. Now, in that system, the possum lives there, and in that time, up in our country up there, that bloodwood country supports the possums to do its breeding in that time of year. And when we pick off the leaf of that bloodwood tree and we pull that leaf apart, we start to see a little film there within the leaf that exists as we pull it apart. When that film is there, we don't burn the bloodwood. When that film is not there and we break it, then the possums has finished their breeding time. When you look down to the ground, the grasses are perfect. They're half green, half dry, and they're ready to burn, and everything lines up. And that only happens through evolution and thousands of years evolving, and people have been a part of that. And people, that's their responsibility. So now when we look at the animals and they see the people coming and we light up, we see the birds come, and everyone goes, oh, look, they know we're here. They know we're doing the right thing. But now the animals are looking and going, what are people thinking now, today? Why aren't they looking after the land? Why aren't they doing the right land management for country? They're burning hot fires. They're burning the canopies. The insects are going, oh, we're dead. Because now the fires are going to burn us, and because we got people who don't know what they're doing anymore on the landscape. So it causes mayhem. The whole system starts to break down because you've taken people out of the landscape. It's such an amazing thing that's been created, and it's such a close relationship to landscapes that humanity had. And one of the greatest achievements of humanity and of our human experience globally for all of us is the fact that humans have been living on this planet for thousands of years and did not destroy it. And that is one of the greatest achievements of mankind in my book. And that's something that we don't have today. And that's something that is our challenge for humanity on this earth now, is to realign ourselves with landscapes again and to re-establish our roles back in with nature to look after country. And the only way that we can do that is to get that all that intimate information and start to manage the land just as Aboriginal people have done in the past. to reform that relationship. But there's something more, even special about that as well, which I'll continue on to talk about. As when people were removed from landscapes and the first settlers came, what they saw was like beautiful big trees, old trees. And yeah, the trees is missing on this one, the tree book for the kids as well. But the trees is the most important thing to fire. It tells us where we need to be, what country we're burning, what soil types are there, and all the knowledge around trees and the way that trees were managed was to allow them to grow old, to allow them to grow into elders of the country and grow big. Because the bigger the trees and the older growth of forest, the easier to manage the land and the more productive the land is going to be. With the right structure, with the right spacing, all of that was all considered in maintaining the identities of country. And so when you have an old growth forest with the right spacings, you get all of that diversity of food on the floor, but also the landscape far easier to manage because it's able to manage itself in ways. So the bigger trees can hold out trees that don't belong in their ecosystems, and they can keep things out, like the rainforest and other plants would just stop at the doorstep. Weeds, you might notice in some places are just sitting there on the doorstep of some ecosystems because they're quite healthy and have a lot of big trees. They can't get in because of its resilience to what doesn't belong in that place. So it was sort of like quarantine in a way. And quarantine was practiced not just overseas, which only just lately started learning since settlement, but about bringing the wrong things overseas into another country. Big no-no. But it was also the same on our ecosystems and in our landscapes. The wattle didn't belong in this certain plant or in this place, or the she oak didn't really belong in this system, because if they did get in there, they'd cause havoc. They would kill the grass. So we start to see like plants that come from the no-fire country come into places where there's fire. And the difference between the no-fire country and the fire country is that the no-fire country has leaf litter. And it's a natural ground cover for no-fire country, like the rainforests, like the river, riparian areas and river areas will have that leaf litter on the floor from certain plants. And even when you go on the coast and you look at the she oak plants as well, the trees, and you see those big stands of she oak, look on the ground, there's all she oak pins on the ground that cut out all the grass. They don't want the grass in their country because they don't want the fire to come into their country. And so as a beautiful relationship, when the she oak or when any other no-fire country doesn't want the fire, all the other landscapes that have been burnt precisely at that right time, when it burns at that right time for those systems, it'll go out at the no-fire country and not go in. Because the leaf litter will say, okay, to the gum tree country, you can have your fire, but make sure you do it this time, and I will be ready to hold the fire out. And I'll have my leaves will be too much moisture, and I won't burn, and I'll stop your fire. And therefore, it happens every time. And all my life doing burns and doing all the burns right in each different ecosystem, the fire will go out right at the next different tree, at the next ecosystem, because of that allowance and because of that respect of one place getting what it needs that might not be so good for the next place. And so it was so defined and so based on identity, and identity is so important. So the trees were able to live to get old. And whenever the tree was used, the roots of the tree, the bark of the tree, it had so many gifts. The trees love to give to people. They love to share their gifts with us. And they love it when we break the branches and take their fruit and take it somewhere else and dig off cut off some bark. It all helps them to stimulate and activate. And it's all part of that long evolution and relationship with land. And trees, we share that DNA with them because we've eaten them, we've rubbed shoulders with them, we put their sap on us. It's entwined within us all. And so those trees, you could use all those gifts, but the one rule was don't kill the tree. The tree had to live. And sometimes they'd cut a big tree for canoe, dugout canoes in some countries, and mainly little trees, they might cut a small tree to make nala or digging sticks. But the big trees were to survive. And that's why you see the scar trees still today all around Australia, all got a big scar where they've cut out a canoe or cut out a shield or some sort of artifact. That tree's still alive, still standing, still doing its job, still providing the gifts that it gives, and still helping to keep its ecosystem intact. And that's why the trees were so special. But then once the trees were removed, when the first settlers came, they didn't see all those different gifts in the trees, which is thousands and thousands of different gifts that the trees give us. They didn't see those gifts. And so what they saw was just timber. And so chop down the big old trees was the very first mistake in Australia, taking out all of that. And even that was contracted as well to farmers. If you were able to cut all the trees down, then you could keep the land. And so they would get contracts by the government to say, yep, you cut all them trees, you can have that block of land, or for 2 bob or wherever it was. And then they would go around and inspect and make sure that they kill those trees and open the country right up. When they did that, they took out the immune system of the landscape. They took out what the landscape needed the most. And what's more important, they took away the landscape's identity. So just like me and you, if your immune system goes low, you start to get sick. And things start to attack you and start to come into your body and cause problems. Same with the landscape. As soon as that immune system was damaged and the trees were chopped down, then in came plants that didn't belong there and come in because the trees weren't there to hold them out. The land started to dry out more, the grasses dried out quicker, and then the wildfire started to become a problem. And those wildfires became a problem not long after the first settlement. And as soon as that started to happen, we've started to see a decay in landscapes ever since that's begun. So now the land has had a complete shock. The land's like, no, the people are gone, the animals are going, the land management's not happening anymore, and now we have a big problem. We have all this wildfire, we have all these also extinction that's happening right before our eyes. And that extinction is happening today at a rapid rate and continues to happen across it. And what happened with, in the earlier times, the farmers learned about fire too, from Aboriginal people. And even then, they would burn, and you go back 100 years, they would continue to burn as they were taught by Aboriginal people, managing lands. And even a lot of part of the agriculture, like cattle industries and stuff, were managed through Indigenous land managers in the beginning, and fire and one horseback and working the land. The same way they would manage the land for kangaroo and keep the grasses and the trees intact, particularly in far north Queensland, in those areas, compared to the south where they really cleared out all the trees. And so what's happened since then, and all of that, those farmers, and along came all the policies, and those policies came along and said, no more burning. And in America, it was Smokey the Bear, fire is bad, don't put out all the fire, you know? So in Australia, the policies came in, then no one was able to put fire on country, and that was like roughly 50 years or so ago or more, a little more. And within that window of closing that, then we see 50 years later, we see people who used to use fire, even in an Indigenous sense, and also within the historical sense, where farmers used to use fire as well, learning, not to the same degree, obviously, to Indigenous and that fine detail, but just to support their livelihoods, had stopped. They had died after 50 years, and in the end, we created a knowledge gap. So the knowledge gap started right back when first settlers started, and that knowledge gap was when it took people off country. And then, even though that practices were still to remain and go to farmers, even after then, when that policy came in, the knowledge gap grew, even from a historical sense. And then we had 50 years of no burning as a result. I got to meet many, many farmers around Australia who were like 40 years old, you know, and going, you know, I was only 10. I remember like seeing my grandfather flicking matches off the horse, you know, and riding around and doing fires. And he goes, you know, I don't know how to do it. I never learnt. Everything stopped. And now I don't know what to do because all the trees were cut down, and even the agricultural practices, they believed, cut the trees down, open the country up. And even today, they stick rake and bulldoze and chain pull out all the trees to open the country up. And those agricultural practices have just opened up more weeds and more problems across the landscape and making our landscape flammable. So cutting down our big old trees and doing all that from this period made it flammable, and we end up with a modern society that don't know very little about fire, scared of fire, have had a history of bushfires, and now we're in big trouble because it's have massive decline on our natural world and our environment. Not only that, not just the fire alone, but the new structure of the landscape, the way it's structured, is also contributing to extinction. Because now we have landscapes with leaf litter all on the floor that should be grass. These areas you should be able to see right through the land and see beautiful big trees and open country with so much diversity on the floor. But instead we see lots of shrubs that shouldn't be there from different ecosystems that are taking over and making our big trees sick and trying to kill them off because they want to take over their land. It's no different to the war between people. They try and take over. And how much our plants also bring other plants and create life with each other. There's also plants that want to take away life and take over certain systems. And when they do that, take away the grass because they don't want the fire, they put leaf litter, and then we start to see no food across the landscape. So we end up with a rapid decline of our animals and our plants because the identity of ecosystems are not there anymore. No identity. And that syndrome of leaf litter all across the landscape, causing no food, can stretch for tens of thousands of hectares. The majority of your south coast is like that. Leaf litter, leaf litter. Thick wattle, you can't even walk through the landscape. There's no food in your country anymore. Then a big wildfire comes and just hits it over and over again. And all the trees can't handle that sort of pressure. And so over time with more wildfires, we start to see trees dying, and we start to see the country flip upside down, where we see dead trees everywhere, and we see thick understory or wattles or invasive plants that are just covering the bottom of the floor with no diversity of the original grasses or food plants at all. That upside down country is the canopy on the ground and the roots sticking up in the air, which is represented through the dead branches. That syndrome is from wildfires every decade, every time coming through, just putting more and more pressure on our land. The leaf litter syndrome also wasn't even mentioned in the State of Environment report. And it is just as bad and detrimental to extinction and contributing to extinction as land clearing itself and mining and anything you can think of that was in that report that is not good for our landscapes. It was totally missed. And it was totally missed because people don't understand the land anymore. People don't have the knowledge of those ecosystems and what should be living in those areas. And that is why our bush food and bush tucker and bush medicine knowledge is so crucial, because we know where to find certain plants in different ecosystems, which is what the identity of that landscape is. So when we go into a place and we see no plants there, and we see leaf litter, and we know that that's a certain country that's supposed to have this medicine, that medicine, and this grass, immediately we need to fix that problem. When we burn country and look at country, like, what you got to understand is that it's us, not just Aboriginal people, humans. It reflects us, and it reflects every part of us. It needs the same care, same attention we all need. It has the same feelings. It goes through the same problems of getting sick and getting different types of illnesses. Not just one type, but many, just like all of us. And when we get different illnesses, we require different types of medicine and different types of ways of getting better, whether it's a treatment for that sickness or a treatment for that sickness, or if it's just a common cold, where we go, oh, well, I can't have that steak tonight, or I can't have the normal food I usually eat, but I'm going to have chicken soup tonight. And then you have your chicken soup or you have your vegetable soup. to get better, your lemon juice and water. And then when you get over that sickness, then you go back to what you were doing, you know? It's the same thing for landscape. It needs that care when it starts to get ill and starts to lose its identity. And the role is to bring that identity back. So when we're burning through this area here, for example, this is sand-rich country, and this country is on like close to coastal areas. This landscape is so flammable, when you burn it and wrong time, it'll just ignite into nothing and kill everything. It will be so hot. And the problem with it is that it's sand. When hot heat hits the sand, sand melts and causes a crust that goes across the surface of the sand. And that crust hardens the sand when it should be soft and diggable and really loose. And that is what the ecosystem requires to have all that diversity of plant life. Sand systems are one of the highest diversities of plants that we have. And in the way of sand country, we call it medicine country because of its high diversity and for the amount of food plants and medicine plants that are there. And so it was very commonly visited to get medicines and foods. This fire you see here is burned at this, got to be burned at that precise right time. And that precise right time is so that it doesn't, is when these plants are not flammable. And so we put it in a time when all the other vegetation will not burn. So the fire trickles through, dodges around, and leaves all the green plants behind and without harming them at all. And even plants that are seeding and having flowers, we all know that when we burn the right way for that country, these plants are not going to burn, they're not flammable, and they're not going to even die from the cool heat. Even the heat can kill plants because of the temperature differences in their DNA and different systems. So that plant is completely fine as the fire dances around and goes through there. And that's because that fire belongs to this plant, and that is the right fire for that system. And it has always been considered for so long. And so that's why you see beautiful green, beautiful black, and that is the contrast you should see across every burn on any landscape in Australia. A contrast of green and black. Not all black and dead leaves and hammered landscapes and burning sun coming down and hot temperatures in our soils and melting our sand and taking out all the organisms in the soil and all the fungi and all the beautiful stuff, organic matter that lives in our soils. It is the precision, it is the mastery of gardening. And gardening is the closest word I can think of, because gardening requires love. Gardening requires understanding your plants, talking to your plants, using your plants. It's not horticulture, it's not agriculture, it's not those things. It's higher level again, because you're living with nature. And you're not clearing it to create a farm, and you're not doing this, you're living with nature, and you're going with the flow of nature, and you're enabling your actions and your existence on this planet, and they will also make the landscape thrive. And that is so beautiful. To have a society on a landscape, living on country, in Australia or whatever continent, in a way that makes the whole natural environment thrive. And that's how you live on the earth for thousands of years without destroying it. Such an incredible relationship. And that is our destiny, inevitably. Otherwise, we continue to spiral down. So these fellows become doctors. They become doctors in healing landscapes, bringing back our identities, and applying fire. So in the old time, this place would have been burned at a certain time, and then would have been done all the time, put a fire down, burn, go out to the next ecosystem. But now we're in situations where we have all weed all through the landscape. And so you can't burn it at the right time anymore. And that land, you can't just go on and apply fire at the right time because there's no grass. There's no native grass. There's only just pastoral weed all through this national park. And it was so much pastoral across the national park there was nothing but that plant everywhere. It was like they should have changed the name to Prosperium National Park. But it was like just full everywhere, you know? And so we can't burn, and so strategy comes in. And so that's when fire is used is used in a way of medicine, and how we look at adaptation and how we apply fire and adapt our fire applications to the health of the landscape and to the types of vegetation that are there. So when we see the weeds or when we see leaf litter in, say, a certain ecosystem, we can't burn at that right time because the leaf litter is not the native grass, which produces different heat. The weeds, the African love grasses, all the invasive stuff is all produces different temperatures. So if we burn it at that time when we're supposed to, we've got the wrong vegetation. What happens is the wrong temperatures in the soil, therefore we spark the wrong vegetation and the wrong plants. And so when we see the hazard reductions and all those fires are out there that are just solely based on life and property and getting rid of the fuel, most of the time, yes, they're applying the fire at the wrong time for those vegetation types, putting the wrong temperatures in the soil and making the problem worse. So 10 years down the track, it's a bigger fire, and all based on their strategies of reducing the fuel, looking after life and property, not knowing that they need to make the land less flammable through very special techniques to improve its health. Now to do that, there is got to be a skill set, and that skill set is not across Australia. We don't have that skill set in our land management in Australia today. And so that's why for us, through the work we've been doing for now 33 years, with Fire Sticks just coming together, the organisation, the community-based one that is non-for-profit, what we are doing is training areas and working with regions and working with communities to regather them skills and to learn those different applications. And as you can see here with this weed, they've been coming in at a certain time after the wet season. And we want to burn after the wet season because underneath is all this dry leaf litter. So we come in wet season time, which usually should be July time when we burn this country, which we burn this in January instead. Now we did it then in the wet season because the soil's wet, the leaf litter burns hot, and it burns in one place for so long that we need to protect the soil. So we apply our fire differently to protect the soils, and so the soils are so important. We must protect them, and we must put in the right temperatures at the same time to spark native grasses and to spark the right types of plants that come up. This all is Indigenous knowledge. This was all taught to me by elders in understanding temperatures and soils and timing, and it is just incredible. There's different DNA and temperatures in all the different plants, and the temperatures, those low temperatures, this plant does not like. And so the fire at that time of year, this plant was not flammable. So therefore the plant would not engulf into flame, it wouldn't push into high fires and then combust and harm our canopies and put more temperatures into the soil. What it would do, the fire would just, as you can see, just go underneath the plant and kill the plant with the low temperatures while we maintain all those right temperatures in our soils. So we're able to then treat, get rid of that, come back and see native grasses come back. And then next time we'll change our timing a little differently as the vegetation changes and as we get the health back to get the right time. It takes a long time to learn all that knowledge, understanding the trees and understanding the timing and how to apply fire and how to adapt your fires to bring back the health of the land. It needs medicine, it needs help, it needs care, it needs love. And so what it looks like into the future and what we see in the future is people walking through the landscape, combing through and doing their like gardening and looking after the land and doing it in a way where, as you can see, there's no safety equipment, there's no water, there's no fire trucks in the vision, there's no helmets, there's no worry at all, because when we apply these fires, they can't get away, they can't escape. And every application of fire that is good for country, every application that is good for country will never ever escape, because every application has to be done with care, not in the care of fire getting away. It needs to be done in a way that is right for the landscape, that has the right temperatures and at a time when everything is green and other countries don't burn, and therefore those right conditions will always be in a safe space of fire not getting away. And over time, as we apply that fire, we're bringing back the right vegetation types, we're making our land less flammable, we're also protecting our trees. Look at those trees. They don't look happy, do they? And you can see the various bony canopies, and you can see where wildfires have come in the past and killed all the branches. You can see the leaves aren't thick and full. The canopies are very, very poor. And this weed is also causing problems to the trees and making them sick. Because these trees also bring vegetation like the grasses and the medicines, and a lot of plants will not grow without these trees. And so now the tree is standing there, it can't drop its seeds, it can't create grasses, it can't give life to all the different diversity of plants, it can't support the animals, and so it starts to go down, feel sad. And that tells you, when we read that, you can read how the country is feeling. You can read what the problems are in the land, and instantly we go, oh, poor fella, we got to help them. Let's get all this out, and let's support these trees. And then over time we monitor that and say, well, now look at the trees. They're much healthier. We've got the right vegetation. There's more animals in the system. And that monitoring needs to continue. And that is how we're using technology to support that history of rebuilding that knowledge base again. So that that knowledge is there for the next generations, because they could see how we started and continue that journey. Because healing the landscape is going to be intergenerational. It's going to be a long way down the track. So to put the 500-year-old tree back in this place, that's 500 years, right? Time. And so we need to go back to the old ways and listening to Indigenous knowledge in a way, in a more mature way. Not in a way of like, oh, that's Aboriginal stuff. That's what Aboriginal people do. Oh, you know, that's not applicable anymore because we're in a different world today. That's all shallow-minded views. And that shows you just how our mindsets, and we have the wrong way of thinking in our modern society. So we have a society today that is disconnected from landscapes. We have a society today that is not looking after the country and is not looking like it's going to live for thousands of years and keep the landscape intact. We've already shown within a couple of centuries the state of the landscape to what it was when it first arrived. And we have not changed as a society, and we have a society that is not aligned with natural world. It's not aligned with natural law. And so everything we do is extraction, everything we do is to destroy and take, and has nothing in a reciprocal relationship where landscapes thrive from what we do and how we be in this world. So that is the first problem. Yes, the first problem when they cut down the trees and all this sort of stuff. But when we look and stand here today, what is the first problem we need to fix? It is our society. It is the way that we think. It is our understanding of the land. It is educating everybody. To understand what they're looking at is they're looking at themselves. To understand that Indigenous knowledge systems is how humans need to relate to the landscape. It is our destiny to do so, and has been around the world for so long, not just Australia. So when we look at the first colonization, even in Finland, which I mentioned in Fire Country, and over in Finland there, I was blown away when I went there and I walked into rock art sites, paintings. And for my area up in Takalak, we got rock art sites in our country on sandstone, hand stencils and things like that. So as I went to Finland and they took me into this rock art site, there was hand stencils and there was animal figures, there were people figures. They were all two-dimensional. There were ochre used as the pigment, and the parent stone was a sandstone. It was no different all the way on the other side of the world where there's all snow and minus 20 degrees to here in Australia. And the only difference between those art sites, they had a moose, we had a kangaroo. You know? And that blew me away. And that showed the human connection with the planet. overall. And so for Indigenous Australia, where we are today, we're looking at our Indigenous culture like it's like, oh, you know, it's worthless. And when the first settlers came to Australia, they looked at it and said, oh, they're savages. They wander around with barely clothes, and they just run around the land, living off the land. They're primitive people. That's what the surface sees. And that very, very surface and first appearance, what they saw, is still the way people think today. And you go onto social media thing, which I hate. You go under there and you see some things that people say when there's like, oh, the first inventors of Aboriginal people, and then we started to talk about the Indigenous knowledge. They go, oh, well, yeah, they invented a stick. That same perception of what the settlers saw, oh, it's not really worth much. They're savages. And still today they have that same perception, that same mindset. Not all, but many. Enough to keep things at the way they are, separated, and the fractured society that we have become because of our disconnection to the natural world. So what they didn't see, and what Captain Cook didn't see, other than two sticks rubbing together to make fire, was the philosophy, was the understanding of the land, the stories, and the intimate knowledge of the temperatures, the landscape, the relationships between all the natural world, all that science that is crucial to our work, to our solutions today, and is going to be crucial because that is the knowledge of the landscape. And the landscape will never ever change in the sense of it being applicable to our world. So Indigenous knowledge is based off the land, which is natural intelligence. That knowledge will always be applicable into the future. And what I'm telling you today, aren't you learning that it's needed now? And we do need this information into the future. And no matter how far into the future we go, natural law will never change. And we'll always need to be intimately connected and understanding all the relationships and landscapes if we are going to maintain its health into the future. Furthermore, that knowledge base and understanding land is the key to innovation. It's the key to understanding how we build better houses. It's the key to knowing how we create better inventions, how we improve agriculture. All these things all come from that, all come from understanding landscapes. And so a lot of programs we're doing, working on agriculture. There was a farmer up north, and we were going to do an agricultural project where we'll work on with farmers to improve their livelihoods, to improve their farming lands, to open up their country, because what was happening from the past practices, from going back to old farmer now who don't know that's farming fire anymore because of that period of knowledge gap, now was facing all these problems. So we went to the farmers, we invited everyone. We got one to go, yes, I'll do it. Only one out of the biggest mob of them. So we got there and worked with that farmer, and in 4 years, we were able to get rid of all the understory stuff, all the weeds that was on his country, open up the land. And after 4 years, he was like, wow, there's grass where there's no grass used to be, where you can walk where I couldn't walk before, or ride a horse. Now I've got more pastures and more land to use up for my farming. And on top of that, he said he's now committed, he's not going to use any machinery on his property anymore, because the machinery disturbing the soils and understanding how the soils were disturbed, causing these problems within the landscape. The second thing that he did from that experience was let the trees grow back. So in his particular area, he had bloodwood trees. And after we'd burn, I would show him, see that tree is dead because it don't belong here. Now look at the tree the same age, the bloodwood, it's alive. That's the tree that belongs here. And this is the soil. And we burnt this time because it's the right time for that fire. So we were able to kill out all the trees that didn't belong there and only have the trees that did belong there remain. And it was like magic to him. It was like, wow. And so now, he let the trees grow back. He's letting the right trees in the right soils, and getting back to that picture I told you in the beginning where there's big trees in the landscape and beautiful paddocks underneath, and you can see right through the landscape. Farming practices like that. And the other thing that he did was he's not using poisons, therefore become organic cattle farm. Now, that is improving our agriculture, and that was only last year. And now all the other farmers, when we did a workshop, other farmers came along, and now we've got everyone's going, hey, come over here. Hey, come look at my farm. I've got this problem. I've got this problem. And so we can improve those areas and improve agriculture. We can look at new industries with the invasive plants. We can look at harvesting techniques. We can look at so much more than just fire that can contribute to our future and the way and reshaping our economies, reshaping our livelihoods, and looking at solutions. Nature-based solutions come from nature. Nature-based solutions can be quickly worked out with Indigenous knowledge systems that have that understanding of the land itself. And so with a farmer, he couldn't believe that he did all that and achieved all of that reclaiming of land with a box of matches. 50 cents. You know? And the thing about our nature solutions, like poisoning these weeds without using poison, but just using temperature, costs nothing. But instead of buying all the poisons, it went into jobs. Jobs and more and more jobs is what it's going to take to get this country healthy again. And learning and understanding. And with that innovation and understanding, that's what our next generations and all our young people should be learning. And getting this into the schools is so crucial, and understanding all the relationships and stories between plants and all the temperatures, because with their learning that, they'll come up with better ideas in the future. They'll be able to enhance their understanding, take that knowledge to even greater heights than where I've gone in my lifetime. And that's what we expect when we hand knowledge down to young people. We expect them to go further with it and take it to the next level and maintain that knowledge to make sure it's there and make sure that the practices continue. Otherwise, we end up with all the problems that we see in the landscape today. So it's inevitable, like I said before, and it needs to happen. And so that's what we're doing. We're training and getting out there, creating awareness, agricultural projects, and also burning in cities as well. So just outside of Penrith, not far from here, we've got projects where we're working with councils, look at burning around the whole metro area out there in a way that keeps them safe. Now, scientists say, oh, you can't burn in the southern areas. You can't burn freely because up north they burn and just let the fire go and, you know, and we don't have any buildings and life and property to worry about. It's incorrect. Incorrect, because Indigenous knowledge and fire knowledge in this metro built-up area is needed more than anything, and needed even more, because it allows us to burn in small patches. It allows us to burn only certain areas. And what it would look like is people combing through and making it less flammable and looking after it, instead of seeing massive hazard reduction burns and pluming the city with smoke and making the landscape even worse, in the sense of bringing up more of the bad vegetation to make it even more dangerous in 5 years' time. So constantly burning around these towns, we're hoping to get a 5-10 year program to demonstrate that. So that then the residents then are seeing multiple fires constantly. They're getting less smoke. They're getting the right type of smoke that comes from our grass, which is the white smoke, and not the black pluming smoke that comes from the weeds and all the wrong vegetation. So in time, as we burn the right way, we bring the right vegetation, we improve the quality of our smoke and the pollution levels go down. It's common sense. But it takes massive commitment. It takes a massive commitment, and it's so hard to put a massive commitment across a society that's so divided and so fractured, when we have an economy system where fighting fires is a big economy. They sell so much fire trucks, they sell all the equipment, and I'm not against firefighters, don't get me wrong. Like, we need firefighters, and we're going to continue to need them into the future. But it is lopsided. It is an industry that is worth millions and billions of dollars. And on top of that, it's billions and billions of dollar industry that is based on billions and billions of dollars of loss. When a wildfire comes and burns all the houses down, and billions of dollars have gone down the drain. It is not an investment. It is zero investment. And it is also not proactive. It is reactive. So when we are reactive, we are not investing. But when we're proactive, we are investing. We are investing in our knowledge. We're investing in our futures. We're investing in the healthy landscapes. And we're limiting the wildfires as we improve our landscapes into the future. So for those metro areas now, when we burn through there, when we first did the fire there, they're like, women screaming, hey, fire! She was just yelling out, hey. And then out of the window, and I'm like, hey, look there, everyone's looking at her and going, oh, gee, we're burning there, and we're right in town. We're right in the city. Just like you see here. This is across the road from the hospital in Adelaide. Look at all the cars all the way along. You can't really see. There's the buildings there. It's like we're right in the center of the city of Adelaide. And when we did the fire, all the people were like, oh, don't burn there. We got the hospital next to the road there. We're going to get all the smoke. All our patients are going to be uneasy. And when we burn and finish the fire, they come out, did you do the burn yet? Like, see, they don't understand. Because our modern society has not experienced how we should be living now. And our culture now, how we should be and where we could be as a society. They've never had that, you know? And so the little old lady over there screaming out the window, freaking out, hey, everyone, and going, fire there, we're gonna die. There's a fear. Now the residents coming out, they're all concerned. They come, we have a talk to them, we're showing them what we're doing, and see the fire going. Then the next burn we do, they all come out looking, they bring their kids out, they're like, yeah, look at that. And they're all there looking at the trees, and they're getting a talk from all the, they're getting a talk and a little tour from the practitioners walking along next to them and telling them stories, what they're doing, while the fire's burning, while they're doing the job. Not like, oh, you don't belong here, this is a fire zone, this is only for the fire people to be in there, this is an operation, get back, this is dangerous. This is like, no, come on in, look at the butterflies. Come and look at this, look at the temperature, feel the soil. Put this in your hand, look at the trees. Come and light a fire, come and do one. Every time that's what happens. And every time that is what this country needs. And so that resident now has a more beautiful landscape around their houses. They have green grasses instead of dead leaves on the ground. The animals have been populated the area, the birds. The kids can walk through the bush and play and not go and go, well, I can't walk in there. It's a mess. It then brings us and brings in the city areas the opportunity to understand how they can contribute, to understand the benefits of reconnecting with landscapes, even in metro areas. Everyone has a role to play, and everyone benefits if we apply ourselves to looking after our country better. It's just inevitably true. And I've used that word inevitably a couple of times this morning. But yeah, so on we go with all this, with this work. So we're working in Western Australia, we're doing stuff in Victoria and Tasmania, and it's not just us, it's a lot of other organizations too that are trying to do this work. And that's what we need to be doing, is creating the practitioners of the future and reskilling the nation and slowly getting everything on board. But we've got to get away from it just being for just Indigenous, you know, because no one listens then and no one takes notice of it. And we don't get the opportunity to actually lead, to actually get case studies going like that Metro one. It took years, hard work, convincing the councils, convincing people, listen, because of the structure and our society the way it is. Everyone's so comfortable in their own shoes, in the way they are, and even with a degrading landscape, they still don't want to change their comfort zones. And that is why we need to focus on our society and our mindsets and break through all of that unwitting ignorance. People who are unwittingly ignorant. It's not being ignorant, it's simply not knowing. And that's what we got to understand. And that's why for us it's really about be able to do work in a way that benefits everybody. Because when we apply fire to landscape, It's not just about fire, the land, the food, the culture. The co-benefits are multiple. The co-benefits are massive. It's there to protect our water systems. It's there to protect our oceans, looking after our land better. Like you've heard today, the agricultural stuff. You know, we see architecture people who really want to be involved here. We've got science and labs involved in looking at products. And, you know, there's so much that comes from the fire that leads to every aspect of our lives. And that is the blueprint of Mother Nature. That is the way that our old people think, in circles, where one thing is related to everything. And so for us, we need to have our human action in a way that is aligned with nature the same way that when we do the fire, it benefits the trees, it benefits the soils, it benefits the animals, it benefits everything on that country. It benefits Mrs. Jones down the road there who doesn't want black smoke on her curtains. It benefits everything around us. And that is how we connect to country and relate to country. And those co-benefits stem into health, stem into so much more, our food, our diets. We start to learn who we are when we restore the landscape and we create that connection with country. We start to understand ourselves better. Because what we do to ourselves, we do to the country. It's a reflection. And so what you see there is a reflection of our society. Fractured. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm saying it in a way that we are disconnected from landscapes. And to do fire on country, we come across so much problems. People are the obstacle. Oh no, don't burn there. We have the Land Act and everything like that. You need to wait for 7 years, because every 7 years we burn that and it's science. You need to prove it first with science before you apply that the next year and the next year. Oh no, don't burn that place there. We don't want it here. We've got our rural fire service. We're not interested in that at all. People just shutting out. But slowly that's changing, and it's changing slow, and that is what we need to do, is continuously change the perceptions and the mindsets of fire into the future across all our society. So on that note, I'll leave it there. And thanks for listening.
We do have a question over here. If you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone, and just say your name, and then this can be.
Hi. I enjoyed the talk very much, but I just wanted to ask, because I have a friend who's got a small rural block, and what could she do if she can't afford the $4,000 assessment fee and ongoing costs of Indigenous bushfire management? Because she's only got a small block, and she reached out to an Indigenous fire management expert.
I don't know which expert would have done that, but we wouldn't do that. Put in a $4,000 assessment fee on a poor person who just owns a block of land. That's not the way that we roll with the program. That's commoditizing things in a way that, and I guess it's up to different people in different regions, but, for us, when we see people like that, we get thousands of requests. We don't charge them anything. What we do through the program is we say, okay, we'll talk to the TOs, or we talk to the council and the people there. Say, well, we tell the person, go and talk to your TO and go and talk to your council and see if we can look at a way to get a program happening that supports your region. And so that person doesn't have to, fork out $4,000 and then burn another thing. I don't know where that figure come from, but it shouldn't be a money-making exercise that way. And where we would like to see it is everyone investing into looking after the land so that it creates the jobs for people, enable them to put the food on the table. And that's why we go for jobs, to support regions in each region, so that we got a model there that the regions are protecting and looking after each other, and the investments are there to support them through different mediums like carbon or whatever else that keeps those management teams alive. And to also look at, we're looking at ways of how we support that and a model that supports each region. This is also about economy, see? And this is about how we improve our economies into the future, because we need to get back to an economy that's based on healthy landscapes. And that's why for us, it's about how we create so many income streams to support the regions and to support the communities in a way that they have the capacity to manage and take care of landscapes and to support their residents and support the people, their community. So what I'm saying is that it should be a service to the country. Our insurances, we shouldn't be looking for insurance. The insurance should be there once we have trained people in those regions. The job should already be there to support them, just like the ambulance, just like the police, just like the modern firefighters and fighting industries that we have today. We should have land managers out there looking after the country, and not to the situation where it's turning into, oh, you didn't get a lot of money out of this sort of approach. That's not how we roll in the sense of culture and way we do things. And, and although that may be possible, like we have had big landowners that say, oh yeah, I need you to do this, but he's a big landowner. He makes money off his land. Oh yes, he can be contracted to do that. But I don't see charging a little old lady down the road big amounts of money to manage her land. And particularly if, it might not even be Indigenous burning, So these are situations and problems. And to me, that is part of the sickness. That is part of society that we become. And so if we can get models that support the communities, then people will start to see, oh, this is wonderful. We're getting our land looked after, we're being cared, we're learning about it, and Aboriginal people have got jobs and everything's good in our region. We're building our relationships, there's respect building. It's amazing. And that's contributes to the new way of doing things. That contributes to the world that we should be living in. Not falling back onto what's wrong in the world today. Oh, we're going to charge you this, charge you that, charge you that. We're just no better than any other. It's still using the same system where one person's, got to fork out this and where land managers got to charge everyone or do this to make ends meet. It's the wrong system. And so that's why our economy base and how we're being clever with country to create multiple streams of income to support a better way of being on land and working with country is going to be crucial. And there are some of the solutions that we're trying to work on within the fire sticks and within the work that we're doing on country.
Thanks so much, Victor, for your presentation. I've been following your work for a long time. It's probably over 30 years since I did plant resource management here at uni and talked a little bit about how do we conserve some of the threatened species that are close to homes around Sydney and use of fire. And probably 10 years since I was working around bushfire resilience in communities around Sydney. It's a slow burn, if you like. You touched on bureaucracy, societal values, science. What would be the one big thing that we could do to shift some of those values and organisational thinking to achieve some of the things that you're suggesting need to be put in place?
Good question, and a big question, but it's not we can answer. And one of the most important questions is how do we help? How do we be involved? How do we make it happen in our region? How do we get our land burnt so that our house isn't going to burn down in the next thing? Everyone's going for policy, and going for government, changing the policy, and they're working specifically right now all over doing policy stuff, and it's good. Let them go. That's what change your policy. But what really needs to happen, and what this is a people thing. This is a community thing, and for communities, this is about activating regions and communities to demonstrate how things should be and how we should be connected to the land and how we should be respecting each other, relating each other, and what are the jobs of the future, and how we're looking after, all these our plants and our animals in these regions. And so for us, it's about working in each region and building that autonomy, in a way where those regions can manage themselves. The only way that each region is going to be resilient is that their entire livelihoods, their lifestyles all commit and all link into healthy landscapes. And so linking that together, like working with the farmer to improve his lands, and working with this person and that community to improve that bit, doing the contracting, say with the telephone company or the electricity company to look after all the offsets for the for the big corporates. All of that there should be happening today. And all of that there where the corporates should be spending all the dollars to help the regions, because they're the ones that are got most of the land and making most of the money from the landscapes. And if we are creating those models, and if we are getting each region working right, then that's what's going to be demonstrated. Because Indigenous knowledge is a physical. It can't be talked about. It's not something that you put in theory. It's something that needs to be demonstrated with action. So the only way to get people to understand it and to get people to know how they contribute to it is to demonstrate it for them and to let them see it for themselves. Like the lady that screamed out the window at first, but then comes down after the third burn and goes, "Thank you so much." That is what we need to be doing. And that's the case studies that we're trying to build for each region. If we can get one region up, we get this council successful and burning for 5 years around, and a big fire comes, and that they don't have to evacuate, which they shouldn't have to evacuate your town. If there's an event going on out there in the bush, this should be the safe place to be. So if that changes attitudes and that changes that council, the next council is going to want to do it, the next council is going to put their hand up, the next one's going to put their hand up. And so through physical and demonstration and by actually doing it is what needs to happen. So where we're at now in this world, we need to, and that's why our motto is jobs and get on with the job. Because once you do that, you'll see. Yeah.